I Hate Politics is a podcast about a human activity we love to hate. I'm Sunil Dasgupta. This week, we bring you a special voice-acted episode with the unfiltered words and arguments of those who oppose change in local zoning laws in defense of their American dream. The mostly single-family homes with yards and sometimes picket fences. Many of the words and arguments are not pleasant. Sometimes they are downright terrible, but they are real and excerpted from thousands of social media posts across several platforms, including Nextdoor, Facebook, Twitter, neighborhood listservs, comment sections of various local publications, public comments on government websites. These words and arguments capture deep human fears, and they are not always appropriate for young children. Consider this our first language advisory on I Hate Politics. This episode is produced by Mike English, a Silver Spring housing activist in the thick of the zoning war unfolding in Montgomery County. Adam Babrao, Biz Duval, Mike English, Ilana Mintz, Eric Saul, and Lisa Winston volunteered their voices. My deepest thanks to all of them. If you are new to the show, I Hate Politics is a podcast about our neighborhoods, workplaces, schools and streets, and our local governments as they function in diverse and democratic societies. This means our politics are messy, dirty, sometimes corrupt, with often self-serving politicians. But no matter how much we may hate politics, we are never exempt from it, even when we refuse to participate. In fact, the purpose of politics is to keep society functioning precisely when we don't agree with each other, like now. It is my hope that this podcast will help those who feel left out reconnect in our local communities. Music for this episode comes from the Treading Lemmings, a Rockville-based Brit-pop band in the genre of the Smiths. Their music is available at Reverb Nation. No news roundup this week, but this episode needs some background. If homeownership is the essence of the American dream, the dream comes wrapped in a regulatory mechanism called zoning. Zoning is a function of local governments and intended to separate industrial, agricultural, and residential uses of land. This mechanism was used to dramatically expand American homeownership during the latter part of the Great Depression by the Federal Housing Authority, and then to house returning World War II veterans by not only separating industrial and residential land use, but also by allowing singular types of homes in particular places. The picture book Single Family Home with white picket fences set out in straight lines. With white flight from American cities in the 1960s and the 70s, and the arrival of McMansions in the 1980s, zoning law has also become the basis of suburbanization. The American dream, rooted in the legal mechanism of zoning, has contributed to sprawl and climate disaster. Suburban homes with average size have grown from 1,500 square feet in 1965 to about 3,000 square feet now. Not only have large heating and cooling needs, but are also serviced by automobiles, which produce more emissions. Yet zoning law in almost all of the United States specifically protects large tracts of land for single-family homes thereby limiting land available for other types of potentially cheaper and more climate-friendly housing, such as apartments. Over time, the scarcity of land in areas that received large public investments in infrastructure, such as schools and parks, and even sewers early on, has driven home prices to a point where it is not possible for young people, especially from families that are newly arrived or haven't been able to accumulate generation wealth, to live in the same neighborhood as their parents and grandparents. Unable to find homes in close-in suburbs such as southern Montgomery County, these families have pursued their American dream further and further out into what are known as exurbs, sometimes 2 hours of driving time away from jobs in the city center. The economics and psychology are pernicious. The American dream of home ownership is also the American dream of wealth. A family's home is most often the largest investment they will make. But I tell you, education is catching up very fast. Once those home values start to go up, homeowners adjust their expectations higher and higher, and any change is not only imagined as a loss, but a greater and greater loss with each increase in home value. Most of those who bought their homes in the 60s and 70s and even in the 80s and 90s see the rise in their home values not as a result of markets, population pressure, government investment in public infrastructure or technological change, but rather their own sagacity at having made the right investment at the right time. And in this scheme, any change in government regulation regarding zoning is seen as a threat to their core self, even though parents and grandparents benefited from huge increases in their home values because of the restrictions of the zoning law and the addition of public infrastructure in their neighborhood. Now they see themselves under attack from local government acting in alliance with real estate developers on the one hand, or an attack from socialist government on the other. This is the ground zero for the zoning wars. Much of the anger in the words and arguments you will hear is directed at a new proposed general plan for the county called Thrive 2050. Thrive has proposed to open some areas previously zoned exclusively for single-family homes to multifamily construction. For the change to actually happen, several things need to follow. The county council has to approve the general plan and follow that up with zoning amendments that will actually allow the change to move forward. But that is not all. Even after government has acted, people who currently own single-family homes will have to sell in order for multifamily homes to take their place. This is a long and complex process where more demand and more public spending will push home values to a point where homeowners want to sell. This could take decades, by which time many current homeowners will be considering how to help their children and grandchildren buy their homes. You're listening to I Hate Politics. I'm Sunil Dasgupta.
This and not the other. Don't ask, don't even bother. The bait and sweet, she's on and I've rejected what's on offer. Smoke 'em if you got 'em. The top is not the bottom. The winter chili's good, yet I'm anesthetized till autumn. And how green was my envy. How blurred I'm hurt. I've got to realign the stars to see me through.
And now, the unfiltered words and arguments of those that oppose zoning change.
I thought the American dream is to own a home, not to find affordable housing. These duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes are rentals. For how much? One reason friends, families squeeze into a cheaper place is to save money for their long-term goal of a single-family home. In my younger days, I had refugee friends who thought to invite me to live with them in their housing project single-family home. I wouldn't have minded living poor, but it would have been highly illegal because it is taxpayer subsidized. Arliss Street hardly looks like a slum to me. The new building that replaced the old one, the one with the gas explosion, has units twice the rental cost I had paid in Northern Silver Spring 20 years ago. Struggling folks cannot afford this, so I'm not sure who's renting these. If multiplex home rentals cost more than these apartments, then what population are they serving? Is there some taxpayer subsidizing going on behind the scenes that we're not being told about?
The Thrive Plan should be renamed the Dive Plan. Once the zoning law is amended to implement the plan, it will allow developers to buy existing homes and replace them with McMansion-sized duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. It will even allow apartment buildings to replace homes along major streets. Because my neighborhood has relatively large lots, even though it is zoned R60, an analysis of one block showed that Thrive would allow 10 times as many residents as are currently on the block. More density than is found in my neighborhood's 3 R12.5 zone townhome communities. It is especially appalling that someone from the Sierra Club would be supporting this kind of dense redevelopment. It will reduce green space, overburden our infrastructure, crowd neighborhood streets designed for low density, overcrowd our schools, and generally be harmful to the quality of life of current residents who value the current density of their neighborhoods. Its adoption would be a betrayal of the trust of everyone who bought their home relying on the zoning ordinance to protect them from having more dense housing built next door.
This will be a disaster. I really wish they'd just be honest. It is just a proposal to obtain, raise, and destroy single-family houses and neighborhoods with single-family houses. It's the progressive dream. Never mind the fact that roads won't be able to handle all of the traffic, and there are almost zero plans for addressing school capacity. Montgomery County is on its deathbed. The progressives are after your homes and want to tear it down. Nothing like working hard and saving to buy a house only to have the home next to you replaced by a gigantic apartment complex with residents too cheap to pay for parking, so they'll all start parking 200 cars on the street outside your home. This is a utopian nightmare. Hopefully we will be out of the county early enough to sell our home to a sucker who won't be aware of Thrive 2050 plans. Progress means turning the entire county into a concrete jungle like Tokyo, except we all know we will get the crappy dollar store version of Tokyo instead of the high quality real thing.
If people want to walk, let them walk. If people want to drive, let them drive. Neighborhoods, the way they are now, allow both methods to get around and will not infringe on anyone's personal preference. People should be able to choose by living in an area that fits their needs. Do not force increased density on neighborhoods because some elite thinks they know better. People are pretty bright and don't need to be regulated on their housing choice.
For several years, the stated mission of the planning board has been to urbanize the suburbs, and they've chipped away at single-family zoning bit by bit. Suburbanites who invested in homes for single families are about to be destroyed by Big Brother.
I'm truly shocked at how few Montgomery County residents know that Thrive 2050 even exists, given the fact that they are coming after all of our homes.
Dear neighbors, major changes are looming for the entire town of Chevy Chase in the form of multifamily housing and rent control. These changes will impact neighborhoods near metro stations throughout Montgomery County and are contained in interrelated proposals now before the county council, such as Thrive Montgomery, missing middle affordable attainable housing, and protection against rent gouging near transit. Unclear what is planned? Look at housing types and number of residents slated to replace single-family homes and rent control coverage. Wonder who benefits from the disruption? Those who find affordable estimated market rates per unit of a duplex, $1,237,000, and triplex, $875,000, plus restrictions on rental rates. For a town of Chevy Chase residents who worked hard to afford this quiet but vibrant, self-governed neighborhood of single-family homes, good schools, and public transit, these proposals smack of a forced taking by eminent domain. Whether your interests are in raising a family, the tree canopy green space, the 4-H property, traffic and safe streets, racial justice, education, parking, challenges for seniors, or affordable housing, the proposals as applied to our town are damaging, ill-conceived, and worthy of priority action. To paraphrase the poem First They Came by Pastor Martin Niemöller, first they came to block the sun in Bethesda with high rises. I kept quiet. The sun disappeared. Then they came to rip up the Capitol Crescent Trail for the Purple Line. I kept quiet. The trail disappeared. Then they came for my community, the place I live. It would be a mistake to sit this one out.
I, unfortunately, have a moral objection to apartments mostly. I think it's cruel and contributes to mental suffering to live in a filing cabinet. So leave that non-debatable fact out of it.
It is a fact that people shouldn't live in apartments. Believe it or not, people need space to think and grow mentally. They need to care for their own space.
Aesthetics is a matter of principles. The notion that warehousing people, regardless of their income levels, justifies ugliness is an opinion.
This is not empowering people. This is killing people. Overcrowding threatens mental health.
Also, given the living conditions at so many low-income apartments in MoCo, shouldn't there be more of an effort to crack down on the slumlords who run these cesspools? Who's to say that a new four-apartment rental in some area like Woodside wouldn't end up like the slums on Arliss? I realize this is a bit ancillary to the topic at hand, but the ease with which so many apartment owners around here manage to keep low-income residents in nightmarish conditions with almost complete impunity has got to end.
If these multiplexes are meant to be condos, who owns the land and the building exterior, and what are the condo fees? Will these condo owners get to vote on condo rules? What is the attraction for owning a multiplex unit versus family and friends getting together to buy a single-family home to share? The risk of multi-dwelling is that infestation in one unit can cause the entire building to have a problem. In my personal experience with condo living, it took just one landlord neglecting to visit his condo for 2 weeks after evicting his tenant. Cockroaches multiplied, regular exterminations were mandated with chemicals, unit owners could not sell without massive loss, leading to HUD, leading to value going down even further. Single-family homeowners are trying to protect against HUD coming to their neighborhood. We already went through this in 2008, and we didn't even have multiplexes. Affordable means banks cannot go playing the same games they did back then.
I would be sad to see townhomes put on lots instead of single-family homes. How about yards? Those are the place of rest, where my kiddos play. I own a lot approximately 10,000 square feet. Cannot imagine how it is good to own a third of it, for example.
Stop ruining our neighborhoods. This is already ruining neighborhoods in the Tenleytown area in DC. We need sane places to live. Overpacking housing makes for more insanity.
Join the club. Got the same totalitarian infestations out here in the proto-Marxist state of the People's Republic. They want to Californicate the rest of the country like they did with the shithole here.
That's HUD and their little plan to flood communities with illegals.
So in other words, spread the trash out is what you're suggesting? No thanks. Surefire way to devalue nice areas. I've seen it for years all around Montgomery County as I am in lawn care. Any areas with Section 8 is run down. Look at poor Montgomery Village. Used to be a premier neighborhood. It's now a complete trash pit. You are suggesting equity, not equality. Learn the difference and shove your socialist ideas where the sun doesn't shine.
This county has probably been among the leaders in the country in welcoming and incentivizing illegal immigration. Tens of thousands of illegal immigrants obviously add to demand for housing, especially rental housing, helping to drive prices up. Well-off residents tend to not be affected by illegal immigration or benefit from it, whereas lower-income residents are more affected by the downsides of illegal immigration. Yes, I am not pro-illegal immigration.
What's your vision of a perfect society? And how will you keep the riffraff out of their houses that you're proposing the taxpayers finance?
The trap. The county then raises property taxes based on potential occupancy to the point where almost no single family can afford to keep a home. BlackRock or another connected entity then buys the home and eventually the neighborhood and turns it all into rentals. Working nightmares everywhere with more pollution. Infrastructure, gas, Pepco, and WSSC lines, already overstressed, begin to fail regularly. County roads are already in a permanent state of disrepair. This is pure greed. It should violate the county charter if the Montgomery County Charter had any integrity.
So who pays for all this affordable, aka Section 8 Soviet-style subsidized housing? Why aren't you encouraging and helping people to get jobs and better themselves and move up the ladder? Jawando? Oh, that's right. Democrats like to fleece the makers and give to the takers. They like to keep people oppressed and on the plantation so they can keep feeding them freebies to lock in votes. Yeah, that's the deceitful game they play. They fool gullible supporters into believing they are for the people when they are not.
Congrats. Now we can pave the road for the middle class to be permanent renters. Destroy single-family houses for condos that are difficult to sell or won't appreciate, or for duplexes that people rent. No good deed goes unpunished. The middle class will be hollowed out because now they're trying to take away the ability of the middle class to own homes, which has historically been the de facto way the middle class has been able to obtain wealth that they're also able to pass on. Who gets to own all of the duplexes and apartments? We all know it'll be big corporations and conglomerates will end up owning the entire region. Affordable housing will end up just creating an underclass of permanent renters who will never be able to build equity. A good intention that will end up just creating a feudal system where we are all now reduced to serfs because the middle class will no longer be able to own land. They call it affordable housing, but let's all not forget that this isn't the same as stable housing. Over time, once all the land has been bought out by big corporations, they'll just keep jacking up rent, which will worsen our new feudal state. Single-family houses provide millions of people across the country with stable housing because payments are likely to change very little over time once you have locked in a 30-year mortgage.
This is all in the grand scheme of the Great Reset, the plan of total socialist control on our lives. This idea keeps the people closed up in densely populated zones that mandate government-run transportation right out of George Orwell's book, 1984.
Look what the same mentality did to Seattle. I refuse to stand by and let the social engineers, in concert with the mass transit multifamily housing complex, turn a suburban oasis into an urban dystopia. I'm unashamed to prefer a neighborhood of low-density, single-family homes, preferably in a good neighborhood school cluster. I'm an unabashed and defiant NIMBY, which I do not consider to be an epithet. I have no problem with increasing housing supply, just not in my backyard. We already have MPDUs. That's more than equitable.
Those people who worked for their single family home chose those areas for a particular reason. They didn't want to be among those market rate duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. This was an Obama era plan.
Neighborhood busting just to finish off the middle class.
Sounds very much like Marxism, socialism, communism, fascism. Basically, you want to kill the middle class and all they have worked for.
This is how the Soviet Union rolled.
It's sad to see beautiful land sold for development, but the wealthy are no better. They're doing it too with farms and then turning them into developments.
You're listening to I Hate Politics. I'm Sunil Dasgupta.
This is part of the globalist UN Agenda 21 and 30. You can request the white papers from the UN website and they'll mail them to you. Be wary of the wording they use, like sustainable development. These things have already been in the works in every city, town, and county, but they seem to be going at it full force now. Everyone needs to look into this and fight it. It is not what any of us want. It's what the powers that be want for us.
They will destroy rural America and the suburbs.
Let's face it, liberals despise the suburbs as a manifestation of individual prosperity, private property ownership, and the independent family. They dream of a return to a centralized 1940s urban environment. They would have us all ride a bus from a small, dirty, big city apartment to an 8-to-5 union job as it was in the old Soviet Union.
It's called communism.
Gotta make room for the new arrivals. Quit complaining, you racist. Your reign is over.
Any rezoning required? If so, the public hearings for that are where you need to oppose it. Having said that, it was Obama's intent to pass a law that would allow the federal government to overrule local zoning laws in order to create high-density housing in the suburbs. He ran out of time before Trump was elected. Now, POS Biden has proposed resurrecting that hideous idea.
Missing middle is a total sop to the developers who can never be satisfied. They are building like they are running out of concrete, and they are just gunning to make more money, money, money. They could care less about housing as long as they make their money. It's sad how they are using millennials to do their dirty work.
It's called social engineering in the Democrat Party. It's a big part of destroying America. Do your homework.
Why do we need more affordable housing? All this does is create more people that need more government services. That is why the county is in a financial death spiral now. Exclusionary zoning is not racist. Are you saying people of color are unable to make a good living? Come up to Germantown to see that is just a lie. More dense housing just means more and more demand on government and justifies more taxes. The apartments cost the county. They don't pay nearly what homeowners do per family. They do, however, seem to use county services. The whole council is in the pockets of the unions and developers. They look at the homeowners as an ATM machine.
There goes single-family zoning in Moco. Get ready for multi-family houses and apartment buildings dropping into single-family neighborhoods in the name of social justice and racial equality. The next thing on the horizon is school boundary changes that involve lotteries and long bus rides. No more neighborhood schools, all in the name of social justice and racial equity. Get ready for the flight of the middle and upper classes right out of Moco. The writing is on the wall.
More social justice neighborhood wrecking being pushed on people who don't want it at the behest of God knows who, most likely white millennial women, for the benefit of, most likely, white millennial women, and an assortment of rougher elements of any and all races. Equity is not a human right. Equality is. You want to live in the nice part of town? Go out and get to work on that career. Don't bastardize the achievements of the harder working elements of society, ensconced in real estate investments, to simply hand out the housing equivalent of participation trophies to anyone who declared they deserve to live there. In the words of the great Britney Spears, you better work, bitch.
This is crazy, and only to fix lowlifes who mostly will end up in public housing. This is just a variation of public housing for low people that pay little to zero federal taxes in the first place.
Democrats, bringing the dysfunction of inner cities to the suburbs.
Move. Progressivism is a mental disorder.
Not sure what's in all this for me. Duplexes, more congestion, reduced property values, decreased quality of life. Glad to see Mark Elrich is opposing it.
If you respond to each housing shortage by increasing density and expanding the urbanized areas, it has the potential to be a never-ending cycle. I've watched it happen over a period of decades, and it continues to this day. Developers and those in government love to see the county urbanized and the tax base increased. But we need to look to the future, what we want the county to look like and how we want to live. There doesn't seem to be any long-term thinking other than perpetual growth and urbanization. At some point, I would prefer people live in other counties, if that's the only alternative option. Curbing our increasing population is the real solution to this and many other ills, but no one talks about that anymore.
The MoCo Council has never met a developer it didn't like. I had hoped that the new council members might change that, but so far, no. As for Woodside Park, my husband and I rented one of these houses in this ostensibly safe and venerable neighborhood 30 years ago. In the year we lived there, our home was burglarized, our mail was stolen more than once, our car was hot-wired, and the day we were moving out, a couple of teen boys came by, noticed that I had accidentally left my keys in the car door, and stole them. One of the movers saw this, chased the boys down, and got the keys back. We couldn't wait to move further out, away from the metro stop and the density. I can't blame Woodside Park residents for trying to keep what safety and security they have left, but I'm not sure that duplexes or fourplexes in the neighborhood are going to take that away. It seems more likely the residents view so-called affordable housing as a slippery slope.
You can change laws and regulations, but you can't change human nature. Those residents bought in that neighborhood because that is what they like, and they want it to stay the way they like it. The article and comments stopped short of calling them racist, elitist, planet-plundering bigots, but just barely. Thrive 2050 will be implemented, and the current residents will move their wealth to where they feel comfortable. A new high-density, low-income neighborhood will be born, and Alive and Thrive 3000 will be implemented to make the world right again.
You're still devaluing the property, all else being equal. Whether the net outcome is an actual decrease or a smaller increase than would otherwise have occurred, the property owner still takes the same hit. The larger question is why any of this is needed in the first place. There's an unargued premise that lower income people are going to live here, so we must ensure there's affordable housing for them, or else there's a housing crisis. But that's nonsense. If they can't afford to live here, then they won't. They'll live somewhere else, as people do. It's not obvious to me why that's a problem, much less a crisis that we need to solve. Well, other than the obvious political reasons.
We in the Bethesda Chevy Chase area are in the epicenter of exploding development already, and all the problems associated with it. Enough.
More renting, less owner-occupied housing in single-family zoned areas is not a good thing. If designed and zoned properly, like my neighborhood, we have single-family together with some garden apartment complexes and another set of townhomes that are rented. Lots of rentals in single-family zoned areas cause more turnover, less interest in helping neighbors, more unkempt properties, overgrown grass and yards, parking issues caused by many cars for each residence, lots of neighbor complaints for noise, etc. I've been both a renter and an owner. Plus, ownership is better for society as it helps people build wealth. I had a neighbor who rented across the street from us for over 40 years and had nothing to show for it.
Homeowners pay a lot in this county to live in a house or on a property with space or in the country. Hard work, savings, and mortgage payments. The county has no business taking away what people have earned and or paid for, and the county still burdens people with higher and higher taxes.
In Houston, literally there is a roller coaster next to a house. At least there was during a program on Houston. Knowing Texas, it is probably still there. Now, this is not news for downtown Silver Spring, the Mall of America. Roller coaster and all was very close to being downtown Silver Spring. There is no doubt in my consultant mind that, one, as written, this could easily result in more than 10,000 units in Montgomery County. Two, just about any close-in property will become some form of bulk housing. This is essentially Houston with very few rules added. The proposed rules do more to permit than regulate. 3, traffic and crime will suffer. 4, we should not permit any more traffic or crime. The next step there is DC. No reasonable person wants the traffic or crime of DC. Then there are the other ubiquitous problems, like rats. I say again, up until now, downtown Silver Spring has done much more than its share for dense bulk housing. Spread it around, see how it looks, take that to the people and negotiate. So far, we are getting, this is next, here it is. That is completely out of line.
This completely changes all Montgomery County neighborhoods. That is the broadest takeaway. No thanks. There are plenty of transportation nodes where high rises will fit nicely, just steps from a metro stop, just not a bus stop. Filling in those spots will provide more than enough housing. The condo conversion at Fenwick and Second is the prototype for affordable housing. Do that. It is already permitted, will not change the neighborhoods, and provide more than enough affordable housing. You want me to make more money off my house? I'm not a pig. This is not Houston. This bill removes anything close to a zoning law. This is not Houston.
Sell and get out. Let the government support the slums it has created in every Democrat-controlled city. Your safety is in your hands.
The bill to codify slums that Dems can use to entrench voter fraud.
There are already too many humans packed into Montgomery County.
Fine, but not at the expense of existing neighborhood aesthetics and quality of life. I remember what happened in Wheaton when Metro came in. Investors snapped up houses formerly owned by tradespeople, teachers, entry-level buyers, etc., and converted them to rentals. Many renters are good people, but many are not invested in the neighborhood in the same way as homeowners. Add in crime, drugs, and other negatives correlated with socioeconomic status. Top that off with parking, congestion, etc. Look at what Prince George's-style multifamily housing did to the Columbia Pike corridor. And that's the lesson. If you build Prince George's, you will get Prince George's. Much of this nonsense can be laid at the feet of social engineering urban planners when what we need are suburban preservers. The ultimate expressions of the phenomena are the pontifications of former Washington Post columnist Roger K. Lewis. I don't oppose affordable housing, just pay for it and build it. And yes, NIMBY. Look at what happened to Wheaton. When Metro came in, along with crack, investors bought up properties and increased the renter to homeowner who were invested in the neighborhood ratio with disastrous results. The urban planner woke attack on single-family zoning will only magnify the wreckage.
The higher percentage of renters, the jankier the neighborhood.
By 2050, Moco is going to be a wasteland if the current foulness gets worse.
Traffic, crime, the two change neighborhoods completely. You are not addressing the total change in the fabric of the neighborhoods. It is easy to defend. There is too much traffic and crime now. We cannot have more of either. Planning Director Wright noted a few years ago she walked downtown Silver Spring, and it is exactly what you want. She was right. We worked for a long time to make it right, and now you want to turn it into DC? No.
Rezoning to get rid of single-family homes is a terrible idea. Why must you import crime into our safe neighborhoods? Look at Tacoma Park. It's a dump. Keep your failed policies out of Bethesda and Chevy Chase.
There are plenty of row homes and small apartments in Baltimore. Why don't you just move up there? I live in Moco for the single-family house living.
If you want Prince George's, move there.
Isn't near just the menu, or possibly the venue. The lesser of two is hardly much to get one thrill. It wasn't meant to be, it's not you, love, it's me. I'm just not what she's looking for, but oh, I could have sworn how great green was my envy. Yellow my spine. I want her mostly because I know that she can never be
mine. Usually at this time of the show, I draw out lessons from my conversations with my guests. But for this episode, I'm going to leave you to draw your own lessons from the words and arguments used by those who oppose zoning change in Montgomery County. Not everyone uses these words to oppose changes to single-family zoning, but we believe that these views reflect deep-seated fears of change that drive the opposition. If you find this episode upsetting or frustrating, please remember that that is the point. This episode was produced by Mike English, a Silver Spring housing activist in the thick of the zoning war unfolding in the county. Adam Babrau, Biz Duval, Mike English, Ilana Mentz, Eric Saul, and Lisa Winston volunteered their voices. I am very thankful to them.
Spend some time, these claustrophobic friends of mine, closing in around my mind. Solitude and loneliness are luxuries I must possess. I seem to spend each guarded day planning how to get.
That's all for this episode. You've been listening to I Hate Politics. I'm Sunil Dasgupta. Music for this episode comes from the Treading Lemmings, a Rockville-based Britpop band in the genre of the Smiths. Their music is available on ReverbNation.com. If you want to share your music on the show or know someone who might want to, please email us at ihppod@gmail.com or reach out on Twitter at ihppod. I hope you will subscribe and share the episode as we bring you stories about politics close to you and your home. See you next time.
Does anybody know how to get away from it all? From it all.